Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Friday, June 26th, 2026, episode 531. And we're going to talk about marriage and war. Which is more racist? And obviously, if you've been following this channel, you know it's a trick question. And I've said it once before. Anytime anyone gives you a choice of simply two, it's probably a setup, unless, of course, they only have two choices and you have to choose from one in terms of what to eat or something of that nature. But otherwise, if it's a discussion like this, it's a trap, as they say. I noticed I sometimes go over, and I know the number of views I get are just like really low, but it's interesting. You can over time you can kind of see a pattern, and race related episodes seem to get more traffic, but when I do race and comedy, I get even more attention. And I think it's because maybe the personalities are trending. Maybe it's because um, maybe because the topic just seems so unrelated. Race and comedy, they seem to be on the opposite ends of some arbitrarily constructed spectrum. But and there was a comment on yesterday's episode, which I thought only proves what I was trying to say. But it was kind of interesting because you know, my mind just kind of wanders and tries to process and see connections, not as well as most, but every once in a while, I'll get an idea. And it came to me in the wee hours of the morning, hey, marriage and war. War is in the headlines a lot. And I was thinking about war as a phenomena. But to follow up on the comment on yesterday's video, we have to remember that it's all about definitions, how we use words like race, comedy. You know, these terms, these constructs, if you will, they have baggage, especially baggage, particular baggage, unique baggage, and significance to people who use the words. But it's all about the definitions. And if you go back to episode 5, the second question of the deconstruction questions uh, requires us to define the words. And I simply said race is a generalization based on a single characteristic. And based on that definition, now it just totally blows up the whole concept of race and racism, things of that nature. And so to make the connection between race and comedy, it's a no-brainer. Also, a part of the reason why people will react in the way that they do is this thing called prior knowledge, which I discuss in episode 21. And these concepts I've talked about a lot in various episodes, but that's where I explain a lot. And the prior knowledge is our first side of the box, our mental box, which keeps us from exploring different things, help us to make us feel like we're right, to make us feel like we've won, because it's based on our prior knowledge, how we perceive the world, how we define winners and losers, victory and loss, et cetera, et cetera. And so uh, definitions are part of our prior knowledge and it shapes the world that we see. And so that's why I say the definitions or our prior knowledge, it shapes our subjectivity. And from that perspective, the subjective point of view, where I am looking at the world with the tools, the language, the definitions that I have been equipped with, from this spot, from this position, truths are obvious. And I create more truths from this subjective position. And if I never really challenge myself and challenge my understandings, then I'm going to create a box. And the box, one side, as I explained before, is our prior knowledge. And I just can continue to increase the information which reinforces the box in which I'm living, or to put it in another way, to reinforce the subjective position that I've chosen as the best one. And it's great. People love living life this way because now the world becomes manageable. Right and wrong are as clear as day for you. But of course, everyone is doing this, which means that everyone's box is going to be at least slightly different. Now, the closer you are to someone like the same family, brother, sister, or a twin, then the box will have a lot of overlap, but there will be differences. Okay. And so the more that we are removed from other people, so not related any longer, and it doesn't take a lot to find someone that's very different from you, then your box is going to be really different. So everyone has their own box. Everyone has their own little truth. Everyone has their own way of seeing the world. This is why most people will make different choices at any given moment. No two people make all of the same choices all of the time. And does your explanation of race and comedy take that into account, or does it not? Or are you going to say, well, everyone else is wrong, which is the easy way out, but it's also a cop out. And it's also a position as an instructor, particularly a university instructor in a very diverse campus, uh, a position you cannot take. Because now you're going to choose sides as an instructor who supposedly claims to be unbiased, which I never do, but most other professors do. Most professors claim to be unbiased. You can't pick a side unless, of course, you market your position as being the correct one, in which case you're not choosing a side, you're just being correct, right? Um, so how do you create unity? How do you create political parties? How do you create group thinking or majority or a trend? Well, you just create unity on issues. And this is why politics has moved that way, and then you have the phenomena of the single issue voter or politicians who change what it is that they say depending on their audience. You see this a lot. Even Netanyahu says different things when he's speaking to a Jewish audience in Israel versus Congress here in America, right? And that's the thing. Most people don't know because they don't understand Hebrew. They're not following Israeli newspapers. They're not listening to the speeches that he's giving in Hebrew in Israel, right? And it's a big difference. And so, depending on your prior knowledge, your perspective, what it is you are allowing yourself to entertain as possible, well, now you're going to create some kind of subjective position. But that's why politicians, right, and most mass movements, if you'll see, it's about a single issue. And they try not to get any further than that because then that's when all the differences come up and it's hard to maintain and keep that movement going. It's also why it's so easy to co-opt, to take over a movement which started with the best of intentions. I think Turning Point USA would be a great example of a recent great example on that. The whole death of Charlie Kirk brought all of that out, that it was in the process, and perhaps maybe he was trying to bring that under control, which is why he was rubbed out. I don't know, one of the theories that's floating around out there. So, given what I just said, to try to push back on my take of Aaron Wexler or Leonardo Joni or any other comedian basically just proves my point. You basically are proving my point. Furthermore, the goal is not to be right or to win. And I'm not, and if you read my comment, it's not about winning. He or she can continue to maintain that position. That's fine. That's their prerogative. But to say that or to imply that that is the correct position, that's when you lose it, right? Because by saying or declaring that something is the correct position, big truck going by, is the correct position, then you're basically saying everyone else is wrong. They're not allowed to have that position, or maybe they're just disagreeing and saying, well, this is the way I see things. But see, I already knew that. That's why I said it in the beginning, that someone will always get offended by any take. So the goal is not to win or to be right. The goal is to find something better, to find peace, to resolve tension, to avoid war. And the best way, so far as I've found, is to be open to hear more. Instead of defending your box, understand why people see things in a different way, why they have different takes on things. And perhaps maybe you can find something better. Or maybe you can realize that maybe it's not all that important. Either way, or you can continue to defend your position, that's fine. But just know that most people in the world will not agree with you. Now, with this broader understanding and with the objective of resolving tension uh, by having more inclusive definitions, I'll give you an example of what happens when you have better definitions. You can reset your perspective, and I forget what episode that was. Reset perspective was episode well, it was back there. It was one of the early ones. Huh, that's weird. Ah, it had to be one of the single digit episodes. Nevertheless, anyway, let's get back to this. So with this you broader definitions, you can reset your perspective. And what that means is you can see more. You can see knowledge production. And that's a concept I brought up also in the early issues or episodes of this podcast. Right now, we create information from a certain perspective. But when you reset one with a very broad, inclusive definition, you see more. You begin to see the activity, just like the comment that was made yesterday, why they say what they say. Well, it's obvious, right? Because there is an agenda. There is an explanation of why certain humor is offensive and should not be allowed and should be censored, where there are others that are permissible, or maybe certain kinds of comedy that young people should not be exposed to, whatever, right? But as soon as you begin to see someone trying to narrow perspective, right? So my resetting of perspective, that activity broadens perspective, it just blows it out. That makes it as wide as possible to see everything. And once you see that broad perspective, all the potential, all the different situations that could be lumped into the same category. Well, when someone comes along and they say, no, 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 that perspective is too broad, you have to make it narrow. As soon as they do that, you realize, oh, there's an agenda here. There is something going on. All right, let's see what they're up to. And the more you do this, then the more you realize what their end game is. You see where they're going, what they want to achieve, who are going to be the good guys, who are going to be the bad guys, who should we criminalize, who should be declared as, better human beings than everybody else. Okay. And so once we reset our perspective, we can understand more, we can explain more in a way that makes sense to more people, especially when you're talking to a broad, diverse audience. What you want is to raise everyone's understanding to a higher level, not to basically say that some people in the audience are just wrong and bad people, right? And that's what I used to do in the university. And everyone except the most closed-minded enjoyed the class because they learned something new. They learned a different perspective. It's not that they necessarily agreed, but they now had a tool with which they can analyze other people. And the goal is hopefully that that analysis gets turned on themselves for personal development, right? But so those closed-minded, so everyone except the closed-minded, well, they're the fanatics. They're the people for whom reason has no meaning any longer, right? So they're the fanatics. They're going to hold on to those beliefs no matter what. Okay, that's fine. But you got to realize everyone else is fanatical about something else. And so their fanaticism is not really going to mean much for them. So, with that in mind, I'm going to pile on to professional racists are comedians. I'm going to pile on. I'm going to go even a little further, more extreme. And I'm going to say that marriage and war are both the most racist things we have in the world today, right? Marriage and war. And I've talked about marriage already as being the most racist thing. That was episode 10. Um, but I found another. I was thinking about it this morning and I realized, oh my gosh, war is also the most extremely racist thing that we could do, except on the opposite extreme. Okay, so both are extremely racist. I haven't found anything more racist than either of those two. And maybe you can comment to think if you found something more racist than that. But to review, marriage is extremely racist because you're only choosing one, which means you are saying no to everybody else. And you're going to do it based on pretty much arbitrary characteristics, positively or negatively, right? And keeping in mind all the different weird fetishes that people have out there, then yes, they are extremely arbitrary characteristics. Most of them are unknown to other people except to that person. Okay. So in other words, we are being extremely discriminatory. Like, oh, you chew too loud. I'm not, yeah, I can't stand being right. So these are weird characteristics that bother us. So these characteristics are going to cause us to say, you're not the one. So, marriage there are positive traits that you are is positively discriminatory in the sense that you are looking for specific traits, right? And certain characteristics of a person turn other people on. They become more attractive because of certain characteristics, and all of the other ones don't really matter as much. I mean, imagine someone who's blind. Right. So someone who has no ability to see, well, different characteristics are going to mean more to that person than other people, right? So we're looking for, whatever is positively perceived by that person. Well, that person is going to be attracted to that. Then there's the negative characteristics. We're repulsed by certain things, like you chew too loud or whatever. Your feet are ugly, whatever. And so we have positive and negative traits that we look for or that turn us off, etc. And we find them in career. What's the person's job, their politics, their religion, their appearance, maybe how they sound, their hobbies, all of these different, and the list is endless, obviously. And so because there are so many different characteristics, including skin color, right, that can either go positively or negatively. And I explained that before in my other earlier race episodes, but some people who say, I don't see color, I make the argument that yes, they do. It's just they don't see it in the way that other people see it. So really what they're saying is they're attracted to someone not the same color as they are. Right. So especially when you look at interracial marriages, you'll see one of the first things they'll say is, "Oh, I don't see color." Oh, no, you do, but you're attracted to that one. And that's why you're married, you see. So maximum freedom is required so that we can be as discriminatory as possible, as discriminatory as we want. Now, war is the opposite extreme. It's doubly racist, right? Because it requires creating racializations for oneself and then the people who have to die, right? So on this end, we got nationalism. We're all in it together. We're united. We're proud to be Americans. Let's just use America. We're the good guys, which ironically means forgetting about all of the diversity, the race hatred, the existence of the elites, the Epstein elites, here in this country. But hey, we're all doing it for the same reasons, right? And at the same time, we have to propagandize ourselves about the enemy. Oh, they're evil. There are no innocents, not even the little kids and babies. Everyone's a combatant, or they're stupid for living in a country with an evil government that we all have to kill. So everyone has to suffer. And so also we suffer too because we got to pay for all this stupidity, right? And so it's extremely racist in that sense that we are generalizing to the max. We are not looking at the individual. It's we're ignoring details. We're ignoring all the different agendas, all the people who are going to benefit because of this war, all the people who are going to suffer because of the war. It's collective punishment, on this side because we have to pay for it, on that side because random people are going to get bombed, their energy is going to be cut off, their transportation, all this stuff is going to be destroyed. And so war becomes maximum authoritarianism, right? So these are two polar extremes, right? Where marriage, forget about the generalization. I want to look at the specific. I want to look at the individual for all of the individual traits that that person has, right? And on the opposite extreme is authoritarianism, maximum authoritarianism, which is war. You have no choice. You got to participate in this war, or you have no choice. You got to get bombed in this war. Doesn't matter if you don't agree or agree. Some people might want to say, well, this is an example of good racism or bad racism, eh, or finding the best or worst. No, this is life, right? We have to realize that this happens every single day. Um, People have basically the trend of society is that we've raised the intensity or the level of shaming, choice shaming, preference shaming, right? And that basically is what's going on. And think about it. If you're happy with your choices, if you love the choices that you've made, why do you care about other people? Are you jealous? Right? Oh, I should have made that choice. Oh, the other people shouldn't be allowed to make better choices than I made. Or are you regretting the choices that you made? Like, oh, I thought I was making the best choice, but it's not, right? That person's not the best for me, whatever, So why all of this anger? Not happy with your choices? If you're happy with your choices, then leave other people alone trying to find their best choices. And this is why people who are self-righteous, right? There's a self-righteous meter. The more self-righteous you are, the bigger the hypocrite you are, right? Because you so believe that you are right, you are in the right, that everyone else is wrong. And so you only, whenever you look at other people, you just criticize and shame other people, right? So the self-righteous generally strive to legislate morality, or they become Karens or whatever the male equivalent of that is, right? And eventually it leads you to war, right? You are so incensed. How could those people do it, right? You don't know anyone there. You're just listening to the propaganda and you're going along with the propaganda because you think it's the truth. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's kill all those people there, including the children. Let's make them all suffer. And then God forbid if anyone decides to do that to your country because you're one of the good guys, right? So it's just so absurd. It's so ridiculous. I have to laugh. But you see where that goes, right? So people who are self-right. Now, as a caveat, I will say I do have many personal beliefs. I have many things which upset me, that make me angry. Yeah, that of course. But no one else cares, right? Why would anyone care? And so that's why I generally don't really talk about that kind of stuff. There are other things which I'll talk about in terms of what I like and dislike, but that's only for entertainment purposes. So the opposite extreme of being self-righteous and, becoming a Karen is to allow people the ability to choose with responsibility. That is, you let people make the choices they want to make and then take responsibility. That is, uh, understand that there's liability with the choices that we make. And so, as long as you accept responsibility for the choice you make, whatever, right? And uh, when you have that kind of mindset, then you realize that the more dangerous, the more riskier the choices we make, then we're more cautious. And so, the worst choices that could be made are generally avoided. And that's how you can tell that this whole Gulf War, the Iran war, happened without any kind of introspection, without any kind of risk assessment. Because if you knew that you were going to put the world or the United States into this extreme energy crisis, would you have done it? Probably not. So to participate in groupthink in that way only leads to uh, unhappy endings, this kind of stupidity, mass hatred, mass death, mass killing, and the United States, we've pretty much perpetually been in this mass killing state of mind. And of course, it spills over now in our regular society, in our schools, to all different kinds of people, depending on how weak a person is mentally, how strong their box is, and how small their little box is, so that they feel like the only way out is to start killing people. So the opposite extreme, of course, is be happy in your own mind. Realize that a lot of this information is just subjective. And as we go through life, we decide what is going to be true for ourselves. And then our outward living is about persuading people to agree with us, perhaps, or persuading people to leave us alone. And that pretty much leads to a happier life for more people, the people around you, the people who rely on you, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And so that's it. So marriage and war, they are both extremely racist. I can't think of anything more racist than getting married or waging war. And if you have any thoughts, you can, of course, put a comment there if you like. Otherwise, I hope that this video clears up what I said yesterday and why it's okay to say that racists are comedians are professional racists. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you either on Jesus Day or on Monday. Till next time.